Hello there, everybody, and welcome to 10 tips and tricks for a good start in these doomed isles. In this video, I'm gonna give you all the things that you need to get a foot in the door, enjoy the game, and beat the mechanics to get into the higher difficulty levels. These Doomed Isles is a really fun, roguelike, turn-based god game, and we're gonna get started right away with number one. When you select your god, you can, for one, select one of these three traits. Confused the hell out of me when I started. I didn't realize that I didn't get all three of these traits, but one of them. But actually, I want to talk about this part here real quick. Whenever you go back, you get a fresh hand dealt, so you can select what kind of cards you feel comfy with for this run. Maybe you want to go for something in particular that fits to your traits, or maybe you just see some combo where you're like, yeah, I want to play that. Either way, you're not forced to take the first hand that you're being dealt, and it's quite cool to have an eye out, especially if you want to play a very specific strategy, for example. So, number two, I want to really go quickly over the housing and employment system and give you a couple of thoughts about that. So first of all, when your followers lack a job or a house, they grow unhappy. Usually, happiness lasts in an equilibrium as long as these things are given. You don't need to generate extra happiness. That being said, it really pays off to have housing in advance. So another real interesting part about housing is, as long as you're in the vicinity of your shrine, these houses will generate faith. Therefore, plan accordingly, because faith generation is one of the most important things in the game. So the vicinity around your shrine should always be reserved for as much housing as possible. Plan your industry somewhere else accordingly. So houses are, as you see here, negating these issues, and now we only have unhappiness because these guys have no job. People without a job, they don't like to be around, but usually you will find ways to mitigate that. But this means, in a nutshell, that you always have to keep your people either busy or find a way to generate enough happiness so it doesn't matter when people aren't busy. So, number three, I want to talk about the expanding and land system of this game. So, land cards can be always only played a few amount of times, and they come with a certain shape. When you connect one of these islands around you, you gain access to the resources there, and you trigger an event. On higher difficulty levels, these events can also be negative, so handle with care. But either way, you gain access to resources and also building space, because building space is a pretty important resource in this game. Since we now know that this area here is reserved for housing, basically, we need to go and build everything. Therefore, land cards are valuable. They get used up, therefore you really need as many as you can of these, and always keep an eye out for them when you're drafting stuff there. So, number four, I want to talk about the drafting and the re-rolling system here. So, generally, whenever you go into the summer, you go into the harvest season. That means you get to draft new cards. You can always redraft these. Therefore, try to get yourself as much as you can out of your gold, and keep in mind that during summer you shouldn't spend all your gold because you want to buy new cards. You only get that opportunity every few turns, so it's a pretty important one. When you go for your drafting, always think about cards that you can use immediately, and only buy cards that you can't use immediately if they have a really drastic importance for your deck. So, for example, wonders for fulfillment of quests, or defensive options because you just want to defend yourself against the monsters that attack you from time to time. Either way, it's a quite important thing, and you should not let it go slip. Either way, there's a lot more to say, of course, about the drafting system, but I think with these basics, you should be well off to get yourself a foot into the door. Also, I want to talk quickly about the redraw system. You can always spend faith to redraw your hand. So if you have a lot of faith, use this. Don't sit on a huge pile of faith, because overflow does not do you any good, and it's important that you get your cards out there. So, number 5, I want to talk about income management. In this game, you basically get two types of income. Either continuous income, like the panning hut here, that produces gold continuously, or burst income, like for example here the celestial axe, which will destroy wood but give me will destroy forest but will give me wood in return. There is always an advantage and a disadvantage in either of these strategies, and I personally find that you should always choose to your own liking whether you want to play a continuous or a burst income. It is pretty cool to rely on cards where you can, like for example, say I'm not building anything to create iron continuously. I have two cards that can transform stone into iron whenever I need it, and that's that. So it's something to keep your head wrapped around, and you don't always need continuous income everywhere. So plan accordingly. Number 6, I want to talk about priorities when it comes down to these resources, because it's a little bit obscure in the first place. So, first off, gold income is one of the most important that you can get. Whenever you have a building that churns out gold and you can live with the side effects, or you can afford whatever costs there are, go for it. Gold is mighty, because the more gold you have, the more buildings you can build, or the more cards you can draft, the more often you can reroll. Either way, you will never regret a big amount of gold in your possessions. Directly after that comes faith, because faith is, just like gold, another resource that allows you to cast more spells, reroll your hand more often, and do lots of good things with it. Directly after that come food and wood. Food is a constant need in every city. Whenever you gain a new follower, you need new food, and wood is the resource that comes around most often when it comes down to beginner buildings. So for example, the panning hut was wood, the first few cabins cost wood, and so on and so forth. Stone and iron are sophisticated resources. Most of the time you won't need it directly right away, and they are the resources that you can procrastinate in the early game a little bit and favor for a quick growth boost when you favor wood, food, and the other resources a little bit over these. These are, in my humble opinion, by the way, a good candidate for burst income, so you can't just select a card that transforms stones directly into income. You can also select these from islands that aren't even connected to your main island. Either way, find your strategy and your idea that you want to play around with. So, number 7, I want to talk a little bit deeper about the faith system, not only the redraw, but also how to handle it, because faith is a critical resource in your gameplay. First off, try to have always a little bit of faith in the bank. Cards that summon new resources cost faith. Cards that destroy enemies cost faith. Therefore, this is a very, very important resource, and my personal impression was I always was unhappy when I went greedy for another reroll too much, and it was always a good thing to have a little bit of extra faith in my hand when a good set of cards comes into your hand and you want to play them all and you have the resources, all these things. Also keep in mind that you can expand the maximum thresholds of these resources, so you maybe want to try and increase your faith threshold as well, because it gives you a lot of extra moves. In my opinion, even more than any of the other resources. Faith cap increases, you really, really feel those, because you can redraw your hand more often, you can cast more of these things. Any of these other cap increases you won't feel as much, because you won't be interacting with these resources every turn as hard as with faith. Now, next up, I want to talk about wonders. So to see these, we're going to go into the card library. Practically every game you get to play wonders, and these are, as you can see here, special buildings. You get to build them only once. They are really costly. They grow costlier with each wonder that you've built, and they always come with a fancy big bonus side effect. What's really important to note about these is do not rush yourself with these. It might be an objective to build wonders to actually win the game, but in my opinion it pays off to procrastinate that turn timer as good as you can because of reasons that I'll explain in number 9 and 10, but you're not under pressure until you've hit that spot. Even if you let that timer run out, you won't lose the game immediately. You just get in a curse that will be bad for you, but you're not losing the game because of that, right? So wonders are powerful, and it's also important to note that you always should pay attention to the fact that many wonders have very high costs, so you need to prepare high income and high capacity thresholds for these as well. But don't just pick any wonder. Let them sift a little bit through them and pick whatever feels really good for your strategy, because you're not that much under time pressure as I personally felt when I started out with the game. Number 9, I want to talk about defenses now. So the game has a lot of defensive cards. What's really important to note is that defensive structures like towers are not movable, but they give you the ability to just put followers in there, defend enemies when they come from that direction, and then remove them and let them work elsewhere again. It also means that you can put these pesky unemployed people somewhere, and it also protects your premises. I personally recommend you, though, to never rely only on one measure of defense. Always try to pick up a mixture of spells and structures, because you never know how the enemy will be really composed. A quick glance also over the soldier type defenses here. These are really good because you can always play them and release them again. Unlike the structures, they are mobile, but as you see here, they also have only a limited amount of times that you can play them. Their big downside is that they cost you happiness, and if they get destroyed, you lose the follower that you have put into. But their big advantage is you can relocate them, and that's a very, very powerful trait, given the fact that they don't cost you any resource except for the happiness per turn and the follower. Really, really big thing. So, last but not least, in number 10, I want to talk about the boss battle. So, when you have fulfilled all these 3 objectives, a boss will spawn. This is really dramatic insofar as this guy will be the most powerful being that you fight in this game. Therefore, plan accordingly ahead before you fulfill the last quest, usually your 3rd wonder that you build, but as a matter of fact, in higher difficulty levels, it is pretty common that the wonder will be the last thing you build. This guy will always have unique properties. Check that boss what he does. These have sometimes really nasty side effects. So, for example, one boss that I faced healed himself to full HP whenever he got to destroy a defensive building or a conscript or any soldier. So he practically negated that strategy. The good side about that is the boss battle drags along over a long period of time. Therefore, in a nutshell, prepare yourself for a longer battle, therefore have a stable colony, and you can always draft your defenses during that battle again, because you will be at least in one harvest phase while the boss is rampaging through your base. So don't be too stressed out when your basic strategy was a little bit countered. The most important thing is that your city is stable, powerful, prosperous when you go into the boss battle, and of course you should have a couple of defensive ideas and measures, but apart from that, there's nothing else to worry about. Enjoy. So, I hope you found that helpful. I really hope that these tips and tricks help you out. Let me know in the comment section what you think. I really enjoyed this game a lot. This is still an early access of this game, so things might change. Therefore, let me also know in the comment section when something might be outdated or anything. I'd be appreciating that. That being said, thanks for watching. Drop me a thumbs up. A subscription would be also wildly appreciated. And if you like what I do, consider checking out Patreon, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. Links are in the description box below. I'd deeply appreciate. And your donations will be almost 100% received on my end. Thanks for watching until the bitter end. I always appreciate you guys the most, and I hope you have a grand day either way.